All right, you can see from this paper that we're going to take this one situation and we're going to do a lot with it. Okay, let's read the situation and see how we can take the math that we already know and apply it to the situation. Tim has a 74% in algebra at the start of the second quarter. He brings his grade up 2 points each week. Now it says, hint, quarters are 9 weeks long. So what you should know is that there's 2 quarters in every semester, right? So if he has this 74% at the start of the second quarter, then he has 9 weeks until the end of the semester, and then that's when the grade is final, right? And then that grade doesn't keep going, it just goes in his transcript, and then the next semester starts, okay? So he has a 74% in algebra. Now, let's see what we can do with this. Now, here's the thing. I will tell you, there's not any actual particular order that you have to go in here. So if you find that as you're working, you want to do something different first, that's fine. But I'm going to start with my table. And this is going to be an XY table. But I need to decide what my X and Y are. And that's kind of the trickiest part. So the key is that X is what's called the independent variable, and Y is called the dependent variable. You may have learned about this in science. A lot of times, X is like a unit of time. So in this case, we're talking about time passing, and in this case, we're talking about weeks. So X is going to be the number of weeks. And what are we talking about that's changing as the weeks change? Well, it's his grade, right? It's his percentage. So we're going to write, this is Tim's grade. And look, I'm going to put in parentheses, we're talking about a percentage. Okay, so here's what we know. I'm going to make a table, and here's the deal. I'm going to make my life easy. I'm going to start my table at 0, and then I'm going to go up 1, and then I'm going to go up 1 more. And then I'll like be adventurous in this last row and maybe do a bigger number like 5, right? You could even do 6 or 4. It doesn't really matter, right? But you can just go ahead and do 0, 1, and 2, and then maybe just one bigger number just to kind of push yourself a little bit. But basically, after 0 weeks, he has a 74%, right? Because that's what he has at the start of the second quarter. That's in the start of our word problem, he has 74%. Now, he's bringing his grade up 2 points each week. So what's happening here? So after a week, what is his grade going to be? Well, he's bringing it up 2 points, right? So that's going to be 76. And then after another week, he's bringing up another 2 points. That's going to be 78. Okay, now this is tricky, right? And there's a couple different ways you could go about figuring this out, right? I could just use my fingers, right? So like here's 2 weeks, it's 78. After 3 weeks, it's going to be 2 more points, 80. After 4 weeks, it's going to be 2 more points, 82. After 5 weeks, it's going to be 2 more points, 84. So I just use my fingers. Okay, that totally works. But let's talk about what this actually means. Let's first talk about this. Like, what does this mean? 1 and 76. This is what? This is 1 week. So this means after 1 week, Tim's grade is what? Is 76%. Right? That's what this point, this is actually like a point on the graph. Like this is a 1, 76. This is an X and a Y value. And we can do everything that we can do with an X and a Y value, we can do with this. So for example, we could take these 2 points, we could find the equation of a line, we can graph them, okay? What does this point mean? This means after 2 weeks, Tim's grade is 78%, right? This means after 5 weeks, Tim's grade is 84%, okay? Now, I can write an equation, and this is what we learned in yesterday's lesson, is that we don't have to, like, we could look and see, we could use the slope formula and find the slope. But here's the thing, I don't need to. I know that the slope is always the rate of change. It's always how is something changing in the problem. And the y-intercept is always the starting point. Okay, now if we graphed these points, we could see this, okay? But we can actually just read the problem and say, okay, how is something changing in this problem? Well, his grade is changing, and is it going up or down? Well, it's going up, and it's going up by 2 points. So the slope is positive 2. And what does that mean? That means his grade is going up 2 points per week. Right? Now the y-intercept is the starting point. What does his grade start at? His grade starts at a 74. Okay? The meaning of this, the fact that the y-intercept is 74, this means his grade started at 74%. That's what this means. Okay? So what is the equation? Well, now I'm just writing an equation, right? Y equals mx plus b. We know the slope is m, the y-intercept is b, so the equation is this. y equals 2x plus 74. Okay, now if you want to check your equation, here's how you would do it. Look, you would take this point, this bottom point, and you'd see, does it work? If I plug in 5 for x, that'd be 2 times 5, that's 10, plus 74, that would equal 84. Oh look, that would say 84 equals 84, which is totally true. Okay, now what does x represent here? X represents the weeks, right? It's the same thing we decided up here. And what does y represent? Y represents the grade, okay, the percentage that he has in the class. Okay, now reasonable domain, we're going to come back to this. Let's graph this first because we're going to see, we're going to be able to kind of see on the graph, and we're going to talk about this reasonable domain because in real life, lines don't go on forever. Okay, now we're going to graph this. So on the graph, we're going to include a title. Now what is this situation about? It's about Tim's grade. You could even call it Tim's algebra grade, but let's just call it Tim's grade. That's the title. Okay, now the x-axis label is weeks, right? This x-axis represents weeks. The y-axis represents grades, right? Represents the percent grade. Now, the scale on the x and the y-axis. So this is where things get a little bit tricky. So when we're talking about weeks, we're talking about like 1 week, 2 weeks, right? So for this, we can actually just say like this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And so on. Okay, however, so that's the scale on the x-axis. The y-axis is a little bit more challenging because I am starting at 74 and I'm going up, right? I'm going up and the grade is going up. So what I don't want to do is like for example, I could do 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, right? But then I would just end up with a graph that looks kind of flat because all the numbers are so small. So here's what I can do, depending on the numbers, right? And sometimes you're going to have to make a pretty big scale, okay? But in this case, I actually don't even need any of the numbers below 70. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a little zigzag, and that it does what's called break the graph, and I'm going to call this 70. Okay, that line right there is going to be 70. Now, the thing is that I want my grade to be able to go up, right? And Tim's grade is hopefully going to get up to like an A, like up to 90 something. And so if I just do 70, 71, 72, 73, I'm going to run out of space. So I'm going to go ahead and label it by 2s. 74, 76, 78, 80. Oops. And I get all the way up to 100, which is perfect. Okay. Now, I kind of did this scale. As you go and do your examples, you may have to kind of think through your scale a little bit and kind of count the boxes and see, okay, how many boxes do I have? What's my scale going to be like before you just write it in so you don't run out of space on your graph. Okay, so I've done that. Now we're going to do at least 3 points. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to graph these points. So I'm going to graph 0, 74. That's right here. I'm going to graph 176 and 278. And I'm going to graph 584. Okay, and you can see that that makes a straight line. Right? You can see I could keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, right? Now, there's my straight line. So I've done all this. Let's go back to reasonable domain. Does Tim's grade just keep going up forever and ever? Can he just keep going and just keep earning points and eventually he can have a 200%? No, that's not how real life works. And in fact, remember, he had this grade at the start of the second quarter. So what happens is the second quarter happens, that's like the middle of the first semester. And then 9 weeks later, the semester ends. The semester ends. So in fact, my graph is not right. See how my line goes to 10? It actually doesn't. It ends here at 9 because at 9 weeks, the semester ends. His grade goes on his transcript and he can no longer bring it up. Okay, so in math, the line goes on forever, but in real life, it does not. In real life, he ends the semester with a 92, and he doesn't end up getting higher because, right, he runs out of time. So this is where the reasonable domain comes in. What reasonable x values are there? Well, remember, x values are weeks. So we started at 0 weeks, right, and we couldn't say oh, well, what about -3 weeks, right? That doesn't happen. So we started at 0 weeks, and then it ends at 9 weeks, because at 9 weeks, it's no longer relevant. The grade can't keep going up. So here, my reasonable domain is from 0 to 9. Okay, and then let's just quick do the bonus and we'll be done. How many weeks into the quarter until Tim has a B in 80%? Okay, watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to use my equation. Here's my equation. Now, 80%, that's a grade. Where should I plug that in? Should I plug that into weeks or should I plug it into grade? I should plug it into grade, right? Because it's a grade. So I'm going to plug it in for Y because Y represents grade. So I want to know after how many weeks, that's my X value, after how many weeks, right? This is what I want to know. Is the grade going to be an 80? And here I can just solve, right? I'm going to subtract 74 from both sides. I get 6 equals 2x. I'm going to divide by 2 on both sides. Right, and I'm out of space, but 6 divided by 2, and I get x equals 3. So how many weeks into the quarter until Tim has a B? 3 weeks. Look, let's check it on our graph. After 3 weeks, does he get up to an 80? Oh yeah, he does, right? He has that B. After 3 weeks of working hard to get his grade up, he's got a B, and then he's going to keep working his way up, and then look, he gets up to an A after 8 weeks, and then 9 weeks, the semester ends, and he has a 92. All right? So that's a lot of work for one situation, but it's going to help us understand how all of these things are related.